Good day, everybody, and welcome again to Morning Coffee and a Thought, brought to you by Wings of Faith Ministries here in Sarnia, Ontario. It's great to be with you again today. I've got my coffee here. I hope you have yours. Today I want to talk about an epistle written by the Lord's brother Jude. It's only about 25 verses long. Now, Jude had started out with the intent of writing a letter which dealt with the faith that he and his audience shared together. It sounds like it was going to be a very positive epistle. But somewhere in preparing to write it, he changes his mind, and instead he writes a letter that's more or less a warning to his audience about what he sees going on in the church and how that could be dangerous for the life of the church. And so in that letter, he has a phrase in which he tells them that they need to contend for the faith that was first entrusted to them. Well, that's the phrase that I want to center on today. What does it mean to contend for the faith? What did it mean to them back in their time? And what does it mean for us today? That's the subject we're going to discuss on today's Morning Coffee and a Thought. Before we get back to our subject, I just want to remind you that Morning Coffee and a Thought can be seen every Friday beginning at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and on our Facebook page, it starts at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. Also on our YouTube channel, you can see Journey of Insight every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Al and I are currently discussing the foundational truths of the Christian faith. I also want to remind you that if you have a prayer request, if you want information or you want to make a donation to our ministry, you can do all of that at wingsoffaithministries.ca. And I can see this morning we're going to have to contend with the kitty. I want to get back now to our thought. So as I said, sometime between 65 AD and 80 AD, Jude is composing this letter to his audience. And he's warning them of a danger that he sees in the church. He believes that people have slipped in to the church who are propagating deceptive teaching. And he says on two fronts. Number one, they're denying the Lord Jesus Christ. And I would suspect that what he means is what was accomplished at Calvary, his life, and his teachings. Secondly, he says they're perverting the grace of God, and they're turning it into a license to live an immoral life. In other words, he's saying you could live a me-centered life, and it's going to be okay because the grace of God is going to cover you. Now, he tells them past experiences of how groups of people have started off well, but then ended up having their lives derailed because of deception. And he doesn't want that to happen to his audience. And so he's warning them to watch for these people who have slipped in among them. And I want to go back to this phrase, I want you to contend for the faith that was first entrusted to you. As I was thinking about that phrase, it took me back to a psalm, which I read every week, Psalm 101. It was composed by King David, probably shortly after he became king of Israel. And it talks about his life and the life of those who are with him in ruling the nation of Israel. And it's about his own walk before God. The psalm is kind of divided into two parts. The first part is about his personal life, the way he lives his life every day before the God Yahweh. The second part is about his relationships with other people and how that should play out in his walk with God. So in the first beginning verses, David says, this is what I want for my personal life. I want to get up every morning and I want to find myself singing and praising Yahweh and giving thanks to him for his blessings to the nation and to myself. And that's what I want for those around me, my associates who are ruling with me. Secondly, he says, I want to live a blameless life. I want to live a life of integrity before God and also before people. He says to them, I don't want to have anything to do with any dishonesty whatsoever. I want to be honest before God about what I've done in my life. I want to live in truth before God. He also says that he wants to be careful what his eyes see, and probably with that, what his ears hear. He doesn't want his eyes to lead him into sin, or maybe be led into sin by what he's hearing. He wants his life to be pure before God. And I believe that has a lot to do with contending for the faith, keeping our integrity, our honesty, and living in truth before God and Jesus Christ. Then there's the second part of the song, of his dealings with other people. He says there's certain people that I think I should keep at a distance, and certain people I think I need to have hanging around me all the time. First, he talks about the people he would like to keep at a distance. He says, those who are prideful and arrogant, I don't need those people in my life. I need to be insulated from them. I can associate, but at a distance, with people like that. Secondly, he says, I don't want to be around deceptive people, people who I know are always conspiring and deceiving people, conning people. He says, I need to keep my distance from that type of person. Also, he talks about people who he would feel are living double lives. He wants to keep himself away from those because he doesn't want that to influence his life and his thinking. Then he talks about the people that he wants to hang around. He says, I want to have faithful people in my life. People that I can see and they're walking faithfully before Yahweh day after day after day. Those are the people that I want, he says, to minister to me. I want them to be a part of my life. I want positive people and positive influences in my life. I want honest people in my life. People who live what they say and are walking truthfully with Yahweh. Those are the people that I want around me. Those are the people I'm looking for to be a part of my life. David wanted a life of purity before God, and he knew that the people he hung around with and associated with would either be a good influence or a bad influence on his life. And that's why he wanted to select his friends carefully or associate with those that might influence him. So how does that work for us today? Well, what I see in the Christian faith today is kind of the same issues Jude was dealing with. We have people who have slipped into the church, who have mixed Christianity with worldliness. We mix it in with politics. We mix it in with social norms. We mix different issues in with the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And this has become what I think is diluting the gospel that we're supposed to be sharing and proclaiming. The gospel is about the Lord Jesus Christ, his life, his ministry, his teachings, what was accomplished at Calvary for mankind. That is what the gospel, the good news, is all about. And yet, we see those who have slipped into the church, who have mixed it with society around us, with politics, with all sorts of things that are not part of the gospel. And I think it's a license for immorality. Jude warned his audience. He said to them, groups in the past started off well, but then they lost out. Their lives got derailed because they allowed influences into their life that corrupted their faith. They lost their relationship with God by being influenced by outsiders. Today, I think we have a lot of outsiders who claim to be Christian and have slipped in among us and have tried to pervert the gospel of Jesus Christ. Jude says, you don't want to be like those groups, which he will reference, that lost it because they allowed bad influences into their lives. He says, contend for the faith. Stay with what was entrusted to you. That is Jesus Christ, his life, his ministry, his teachings, and his accomplishments at Calvary. We need to be led by the Spirit of God and not by the voices we hear around us. We have voices that are slipping in to the church today, just like they did back in that 65 to 80 AD time period that Jude is talking about. We need to stay pure to what Christ has put in our hearts, and that is the gospel, and only the gospel, not the gospel plus my political opinions or adding on something to Christ. Nothing needs to be added. Our gospel is about Jesus Christ and only Jesus Christ and his accomplishments for mankind. The gospel is what is important. It was important in Jude's time, and it's just as important today that we contend for the faith that we were entrusted with by the Spirit of God. Listen, have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you again next week.